The show that reveals how extraordinary items in our world are designed, constructed and produced. See the engineering, the technology and big ideas that make the world go round. Find out how it works. Coming up, producing Scotch whisky. Why it takes over a decade to make everyone's favourite medicine. From curdled milk to delicious spread. Find out how cream cheese gets from the farm to the fridge. And making toilets. It may not be the most comfortable seat in the house, but it's definitely the most important. But first, one of the most dangerous jobs in the world. Working on high voltage cables is a risky business. The people who do it are handling cables that carry 345,000 volts whilst strapped to a helicopter. They can't just wear jeans and a t-shirt when they're doing this job. All of their clothes are lined with a special metal mesh, right down to the socks. Here's how it works. Electricity flows along the easiest path. As metal has a much lower resistance than flesh and bone, the electricity is conducted safely around the body rather than through it. Here in America, most of the jobs are done with a repairman strapped onto a platform which is welded to a helicopter. They edge up to the power lines which are attached to the tower. Since the helicopter is only touching the cable, the electricity flows round it in a loop and doesn't build up in any one place. Here, he's changing an isolator. That stops the electricity flowing down the supporting pole. The repairman obviously needs to have a pair of steady hands. And so does the pilot. Helicopters are notoriously hard to fly, even without someone hanging off the edge. If he were to lose control now, it would almost certainly be the end of both of them. To ease the pilot's load, a member of the crew remains on the ground to coordinate everything.
Truck 12 to Alpha Whiskey. You've been out 40 minutes.
The less the pilot has to think about whilst he's hovering, the better.
Copy that, Art. We'll be in 10 minutes. This is 369 Alpha Whiskey.
With some jobs taking hours, it can mean several refueling trips. Because of the platform attached to the helicopter, they can't fill the tank all the way up, or the total weight would upset the balance and the pilot wouldn't be able to keep the helicopter steady. If a job's next to a pylon, then the helicopter has to drop the repairman off and leave him to make his own way. Not only does he need the courage of a firefighter, now he also needs the skills of a tightrope walker. If you're scared of heights, then there is definitely no need to apply for this job. The electricity and winds make the lines vibrate, which can cause the bolts to loosen over time. This means that they have to be serviced and occasionally replaced by hand. With another exhausting job complete, he can shuffle back down the line to a place where it's safe to be picked up. As if that job wasn't tough enough, here he's only got 2 lines to move along. This is an unbelievably dangerous job, and most people wouldn't do it for all the money in the world. But for the power companies, it's well worth the hefty pay packets they hand out at the end of the month. These guys save them about $60 million a day. Back on the relative safety of the platform suspended beneath the helicopter, the repairman can head back to base to put his feet up, knowing that his heroics have kept power flowing to thousands of homes. The average person will spend 3 whole years of their life on the loo. This is the story of how a factory makes the most essential piece of furniture in your house. A mold for the toilets is made inside this casing. They pour in a liquid compound that contains gypsum. It's a natural mineral that soaks up moisture. This will draw water out of the clay bowls so they'll dry quicker later on. The mold is made in 4 parts, which set in just 20 minutes. The gypsum can only draw out a certain amount of water before it's saturated, so these molds can only be used to make about 100 toilets each. The ceramic for the toilet is mostly made out of clay, but a mixture of other natural minerals has been added to provide strength. It's all mixed together with water in a cauldron. These vibrating machines get rid of any lumps. And then, after a quick check to make sure the liquid is at the right consistency, it's ready to be poured into the gypsum molds. One hour later, a quick blast from a pressure hose opens them up. The excess is cut away and will go off to be recycled. The toilet chute is added by hand and then blended in using a wet sponge. The result is a fine sculpture with sweeping curves that would grace any bathroom. While it's still soft, they cut out the drainage hole. After that, it's given a quick wipe and then left to dry on a rack overnight. The next morning, it's dry, but it's still very absorbent. So they coat it with a glaze of powdered glass, chalk and water. This will form a waterproof layer when it's fired. The glazing on the outside of the toilet is sprayed on. When the factory is busy, the extra workload is done by hand, but most of the time it's all done by robots. Either way, the end result is the same. The toilet is still brittle, so in the final stage it's baked in a kiln. And this is one seriously big kiln. It's 120 meters long with 3 separate zones. In the first zone, it's gently warmed up. Too much heat too soon would distort the clay. Then in the second, it can be blasted with 1200 degrees Celsius, which turns it rock solid. As they pass through the final zone of the kiln, the toilets are cooled down, and then they're finished. The bowls are ready to be fitted with seats and plumbed into bathrooms across the country. On average, we pay about 2,500 visits to one every year. Despite the fact the humble loo is used so often, it's seldom appreciated. Coming up after the break, the oldest operating distillery in the Scottish Highlands. How a blazing barrel gives Scotch its unique flavour. And cream cheese. How a factory makes a not-so-creamy variety for Weight Watchers. No drinks cabinet would be complete without a fine bottle of Scotch whisky. Where better to see it being made than the Scottish Highlands? This is the Strathisla Distillery in Keith. The main ingredient is barley. It's harvested and then taken to the distillery. The first step is malting. The barley is soaked in water for 3 to 5 days. During this time, starches turn into sugars. Then it's dried over burning peat, and the smoke adds flavour to the whisky. Once the barley's been malted, this machine grinds it down to a coarse flour. This huge vat is called the mash tun. It's used to mix the ground flour with hot water. Some yeast is added, and the mix starts to turn into alcohol. It's transferred to these giant copper distillery kettles and heated to 86 degrees Celsius. The alcohol evaporates and travels up these pipes where it cools down and becomes a liquid again. After around half an hour of this process, the fluid coming out has reached between 20 and 40% alcohol. This is called low wine. The low wine goes through the process again in a second kettle, and what comes out then is seriously strong, between 60 and 70% alcohol. This will be barreled and turned into whisky. Scotch is a serious business in Scotland. By law, distilleries can only store whisky in barrels made of oak. New barrels would give the whisky too much of a woody flavour, so they recycle old ones which are fixed up by a team of coopers. These old barrels could have been previously used for bourbon, sherry, or even another whiskey. As well as providing a less woody flavour, they also impart a subtle character from their previous contents. First, the iron hoops are removed. The tops are knocked out. The wood is shaved. And finally, the hoops are tightened and replaced. Then, the barrels suffer trial by fire. The worker pops a cover on to cut off the supply of oxygen. Otherwise, the barrel would burn to a cinder instead of just getting toasted. A thin layer of charcoal has formed on the inside, which will add flavour and colour to the whiskey as it slowly matures. The cask is covered again, this time to seal in the smoke and enhance the flavour. The barrel's boarded up and is ready to be filled. Each barrel holds over 250 litres. Once the stopper is bashed into place, the whiskey won't see the light of day for many years. It's stacked among hundreds of other barrels in a darkened warehouse. To be classified as Scotch, the whiskey has to mature for at least 3 years. But top single malts are left for much longer. Ours won't come out for another 12 years. Over that time, alcohol gradually evaporates through the oak barrel, reducing the alcohol content from over 60% to around 40%. Here's one they made earlier. The master taster tries a sample to check it's ready. Just a nod from him, and it's off for bottling. After over a decade in the making, the bottle plant is the last stage before the whiskey can hit the shelves. Distilleries like this one are vital to the UK's economy. The annual export of Scotch is worth over £2 billion. From just barley, water and yeast to fine Scotch whiskey, it goes to show that the simple things in life really can be the best. Would you spread sour milk on your bread? You might not think so, but that's actually what cream cheese is. It's not as popular as cheddar in the UK, but it's catching on fast. At this German factory, they process 450,000 litres of milk a day. But before it can be turned into cream cheese, it's got to be cooled down. Next, it's separated into skimmed milk and cream. These are then blended back together in varying quantities to give cream cheeses with a range of different fat contents. The dairy mix needs to be pasteurized. It's heated for 20 seconds at 73 degrees to kill off any germs. Then lactic acid is added. When the mixture is heated, the lactic acid spreads through the milk, making it thicker and turning it sour. It's then poured into a separator to remove the excess liquid, which is called whey. If you remember Little Miss Muffet, you might be able to guess that what's left behind is the curd. This is what the cheese will be made out of, but it needs a little salt, or a little bucket of salt. Then it's heated again, just in case any germs made it through. When you think of cream cheese, smoked salmon and a bagel might come to mind. But this factory caters for a wide range of tastes. This cream cheese is going to be mixed with dried onions and chives. If you've got a date in the evening, you might want to think twice about having this for lunch. Cream cheese is different from other cheeses. It's not allowed time to mature, as it's meant to be eaten fresh. Despite its popularity in Europe, it was actually invented in the United States. In 1872, a New York farmer developed a richer cheese than ever before, and this became known as cream cheese. The final step is to whip up the cheese with some nitrogen gas. This helps to increase its volume and makes it easier to spread. The tubs are made out of the plastic on these two rolls. It's heated, and then a machine punches it into shape. Next, each pot gets a perfect portion. That includes the Weight Watcher variety. They're sealed, chilled for 12 hours, and then ready to hit the supermarkets.